Hello so buddies, hi and welcome back to the channel. If you're just joining us here for the very first time, you're most welcome. My name is Joy and I am the tutor and the convener for this channel, Way by Anwuli. In today's tutorial, we'll be learning how to make this 3-part corset dress. It's a circle dress with a corset bodice and of course a loop at the back with an eyelet for tying it and snatching it. Without wasting much of our time, let's get right into the tutorial. Here I'm using a fabric of 3.5 yards. Here I have my lining, my interfacing for the fabric and the lining, and of course my padding or my wadding for the bust area. Then the first thing I'm gonna have to do with my basic bodice block is to mark out my underbust. Here I'm using 14.25 for my underbust, which is my underbust, and I've gone ahead to rule that line to give me my underbust line. Then here I've joined these two pieces together and marked the bust point. From the bust point I'm going up 0.5 up and 0.5 down. Now coming to the underbust line, my round underbust is 30, so 30 divided by 4 is going to give you a 7.5, and here I'm marking that 7.5 and skipping the dart. Then after marking the 7.5 on that underbust line, it gave me the remnant is 1.75, and then I've gone ahead to share the 1.75 on the two sides of the line, giving 1 inch to the left and then 0.75 to the right. Now after I've done this, the next thing I'm gonna have to do is to link my bust point to that underbust line, like so, that point at the underbust, and I'm gonna have to link it with broken lines. Then dividing these broken lines into 3, I'm gonna have to mark one part below. What we are just trying to do basically is to get our curve, that's our bust curve, without making it too pointy. So I'm gonna have to link these 3 points together. That's the 0.5 below, linking it to the 3 parts of that broken line, and then just linking it down to the underbust, and then from the underbust you're going to link it down to the waist, like so. After that, I'll go ahead and divide the front pattern from the back pattern because I want to start altering my front pattern proper. So here what I'm doing basically is to cut out I'm cutting out the dart area, that's the part which I won't be needing, so that I'll be able to manipulate this pattern for the 3-part corset. So here I want to go ahead and close my shoulder, that's like so. Here I'm closing my shoulder dart. Please, I made a detailed tutorial on how to draft your basic bodice block. It's on the channel. I'm going to be linking it in the description box. Do well to see that video. So yeah, I've gone ahead to do that. From my neckline I'm coming down 6.5, then from that 6.5 I'm going in 0.5, like so. Then from my shoulder I'm also coming down 7 inches, and then with my curve I've gone ahead to link these 2 points together and then to the armhole. Now this is going to be a sweetheart neck, but then it's going to be a very light sweetheart neck. So here I've gone ahead to snatch the bust area, the upper bust. So I've fought for it to be well snatched without any gaping at that point. I've gone ahead to go to take 0.5 inches on both sides of that line, like so, and then going with my French curve I'm going to be connecting it to the bust point, like so. Now coming in from the side, I've come in 2 inches. What I'm doing here basically is to draw my cup, the shape of the cup. So from the side I've gone in 2 inches, and then going in with my French curve like you're seeing me do, I've gone ahead to draw and link it down to the underbust line, like so. And then from that 0.5 inch from the center front I'm also going to be linking it to the underbust, like so. After I've done this, I'll go ahead and cut out this yoke part because I don't need it for this 3-piece. After doing that, I want to go ahead and close up that upper bust dart and just through it that stream off the excess so that the 2 points will meet when I'm stitching it. Now it's time for me to mark out the 3rd part of this 3-piece corset, which is going to be the upper part. So here what I'm marking is 2.25, and I'm just going to go ahead and link the 3 points, like so. I marked it on the center front, the side, and also the middle, and then I'm just going to link it like so. After doing that, next thing I've gone ahead to do here is to mark out my pattern piece so that I do not mix them up. So you want to mark out your pattern piece so that you do not mix them up, and also to mark out the direction of the direction of the pattern piece. You know, here I've just gone ahead to use the arrows for the upper part to show that that is the up part, and then just marked it out, indicating the center, front, the side, and what have you, so that I will not mix it up when I'm stitching. So yeah, the next thing I've gone ahead to do is to mark out my strap. Remember, it's going to be a spaghetti strap, so I've gone ahead to mark that strap out. So after that, I've gone ahead to cutting out my pattern piece right now. So I've gone ahead to cut out my pattern piece like so, making sure that everything is intact. So after I've done that, the next thing I'm going to be doing is to be joining that the number one, that's the 3-piece, the first one, the one I labeled one. I'm gonna have to join it because both of them are going to be together. Now going to the back part of this pattern, the back part is pretty straightforward. So here I've gone ahead to mark out the depth of the neck. Here I'm using a 10-inch from the neck like so. I want it to be that deep, and then going with my French curve, I'm just going to be linking it to the side. So the next thing I'm doing here is to extend my dart up to that line, and after extending it, I've gone ahead to mark out 0.5 on both sides of that line, just so that I'll be able to snatch that back very well without gaping at that back line. And then going with my rule, I'm going to go ahead and link it to the waist like so. So yeah, I'm shading it out to indicate that that part is not needed in our pattern. It's going to be going off. So this circle I'm marking is going to be where our eyelet is going to be situated, and here is going to be our modesty panel. Here I've also gone ahead to draw out the strap, the spaghetti strap, and after that I'm just going to be cutting out my pattern piece. Like I said, this back pattern is pretty straightforward. So here I've gone ahead to mark up my pattern piece like so. After marking out my pattern piece, I'm going to go ahead and cut out all my fabric, my interfacing, the linings, and everything that is going to be needed. So yeah, the next thing I'm working on is the down part of this dress, and remember, it's going to be a full circle. That's a 360-degree circle. Now my waist is 29, and to get a full circle, the radius of a full circle, you want to do your waist divided by 6.28. so yeah, I'm using 29 divided by 6.28, and it gave me a 4.6, and I'm just going to approximate it to the nearest whole number that I can find on my tape rule, which is 4.75. Remember, we are working with inches. Now my half length here is 17.5, my full length is 42. So here, to get the length of our circle, we are going to be doing 42 minus 17.5, and it's going to give me 24.5. The next thing I'm doing is to add my seam allowance to 24.5, and here I'm using the 1-inch seam allowance because I'm going to be needing 0.5 for the top part to join to the waist, and 0.5 for the hem to turn up with the lining. So 0.5 plus 0.5 is going to give me 1 inch, and that is why I'm adding 1 inch for my seam allowance. So 24.5 plus 1 is going to give me a 25.5. That's going to be the length of my circle. So yeah, the next thing I'm doing now is to mark out my circle. Here I'm marking out my radius. Now, because my circle is going to be having a joining at this side, I've also gone ahead to approximate that 4.75 and just, approximate it to 5 inches because of the joinings that are going to be on the side. I don't want to have any shortage of fabric. Instead of it to be smaller, it's better for it to be more so that I can always trim off at the end. So I've gone ahead to make my radius 5 inches, and then of course my full length here is 25.5, which is what we already measured out. And after marking out this, I'm going to go ahead and cut it out like so. So after marking out my circle, I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. Now, if you're enjoying this tutorial, this is just a reminder for you to hit that subscribe button, turn on post notifications so that you get notified whenever we post new videos. I also encourage you to share this video to your friends. Who knows, it might be of help to someone. So after this, I'm going to be cutting out on the circle. Remember, this is a circle skirt, and because my fabric is not that wide to accommodate a full circle, I've gone ahead to do it on half. So yeah, I'm cutting out the second part. Now it's time to sew. Remember our 3-part corset? I've gone ahead to cut it on my fabric like so. Cut it on my fabric like so and cut it into 2 places. Remember, we have 2 busts. Of course, this whole thing is half. We cut on half so that when we are cutting on the fabric, the lining and the interfacing, we'll cut it in 2 parts. So yeah, I've gone ahead to join these parts together, starting with number 2 and number 3, making sure that my notches are lined. We want to make sure of that. After joining it, then you want to join these 2 and 3 to number 1. That is how you join your 3-part corset to make it easy for you to work with. So you want to do that. Now when I cut out my fabric on my patterns on my fabric, I added 0.5 inch seam allowance round. All the seam allowances I'm using are 0.5 inch seam allowance, just to put it out there. So yeah, this is what it looks like. After joining, I'm going to go ahead and give it a good press with my pressing ham and then bring it back for stitching. Here I'm sewing the second part of this 3-piece corset. Here, this is the second bust area. I'm also going to go ahead and do the same thing for my lining as well. You know, the lining and the main fabric is exactly the same. So yeah, I've gone ahead to do the same thing for my lining. Now after sewing my lining, I also went ahead to cut my padding exactly like the fabric and the lining. You see, adding my 0.5 inch seam allowance, and I'm just going to go ahead and join this fleece interfacing like so. Now I'm using a new kind of fleece interfacing. Actually, I'm just trying this out for the very first time for this corset. I've been using this soft type, but I decided to use this hard one to see what the effect would be like. So this is actually the first time of me using this particular interfacing for my padding area. So for the fleece, for this interfacing, I've gone ahead to join this I cut out this piece in 4 places because I want to double it for each bust. So after cutting it out in 4 places, I've gone ahead to stitch this down. Because I don't have a zigzag machine, I'm doing a top stitch on all the seams, and after that I'll go ahead and trim it off so that it lays flat and clean. But if you have a zigzag machine, you can go ahead and just use a zigzag machine for that. So here I'm placing the 2 cups together. What I've just done basically is to create my cups. Remember, I said I cut it in 4 places so that I'll be able to use 2 cups for 1 bust. So yeah, I've gone ahead and join the 2 cups, and then I'm bringing in my fabric to cover the cups like so. Now when you are covering it with your fabric, you want to make sure that you stretch it very well so that it lays flat and clean. Now this particular interfacing also has a fusible side, and it's the fusible side that is touching the fabric, so that when I'm done pinning, I can go ahead and press it and it just fuses directly on the fabric. So it makes it neater and smoother on the outside part. So after pinning, I've gone ahead to, sew it down like so and then give it a good press. Yeah, I'm trimming off the excess interfacing because after stitching, I noticed there was an excess. After that, I'm going to give it a good press. Yeah, I'm doing it for the second interfacing. The second padding, I'm sewing the second padding and working on the second cup just like I did for the first cup. After that, this is what it looks like. And then now let's work on the bodice of this 3-piece corset. This bodice is pretty straightforward. I'm just going ahead to join the seams like so. Remember, I said I added 0.5 inch for all my seams, and for the side seam I added 1 inch. The side seam is the only part where I added 1 inch. So here I'm sewing down my lining just like I did for the fabric. Remember, anything you do for the fabric, you also do for the lining. Now it's time for me to draw my lines for my bone channel. So yeah, this is how the bone channel is going to be. Now when you're drawing for bone channel, you must not follow exactly what they did, or or exactly the style you saw online. You can actually work your own lines. You can actually make your own designs. It must not be exactly. As far as they are straight lines, it works pretty fine. As far as they are not curved lines, it works pretty fine. Now coming into the boning, I'm using a Regling boning, a 7mm Regling boning. And here, for you to put your bone channel, I've first of all came from the top, I came 0.5, and then to the down part I stopped 0.5 before the end of my fabric. So here what I'm doing basically is to mark out the boning that I'll be needing using the measurement on the line. You see, like now I'm placing it to make sure that everything is equal. Now for the slanty line, I make sure that the edge of the boning is also slanty so that it doesn't bulge at that point where they meet. So I've gone ahead to mark out the boning on all these lines like so. After preparing my boning, the next thing I'm going to do is to press the boning flat. So for the strip, I'm using a 1.5 inch strip. Here we are not going to be creating a boning channel that we are going to be passing through. We are going to be encasing it in a strip before sewing it on the fabric. So here I've gone ahead to iron my boning. This is what it looks like after ironing. Please, I always advise, please don't sew your boning without ironing. It makes your work easier and it makes the corset come out neat and fine. So here I've gone ahead to iron it and it's time to start stitching. Now for sewing my boning channels, I'm going to be starting with this one that has a slanty end like so, and I'm sewing it on the right side of this case, my bone case here, coming in 0.25 from the edge like you're seeing me do. So you want to sew it down to the end of the boning. After sewing it down to the end of the boning, the next thing you want to do is to wrap it round wrap the strip round the boning like so. You just want to wrap it and then place it on the line, starting from the very beginning of that line. You want to place it like so and then stitch it down on the sewing machine. So that's what I've gone ahead to do. You want to stitch down the part that is open first, wrap it firmly, make sure it is very tight and taut on that boning very well without any excess or without any bulging on the boning. Just make sure it's flat and clean, and then you sew it directly on that line like so up to the very end. After securing that part, the next thing you want to do is to sew the second part just like you're seeing me do. So yeah, this is what it looks like after stitching. Now going to the second boning, the second part of this boning, the opposite part, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing and then just wrap it, you know, to encase it and then stitch it down just like you're seeing me do. I'm also going to go ahead and do the same thing for other channels. Now for the center line, you want to make sure that it is covering these two bonings or these two boning channels exactly at that point where it meets. You want to make sure that it's covering the boning channel, and to make sure of that, I've gone ahead to trim off the excess strip like so that when I'm placing this other one, it's going to cover it well. So remember, like I said, you come down 0.5 inch for the boning so that when you are sewing or turning your main fabric to with the lining, you're not sewing directly on your boning. In as much as this boning is a sewable boning, you don't need to sew when you are sealing your clothes. If not so, it's going to be bulgy and it's not going to look so good. So here I'm stitching down the center boning, that's for the center front, and as you can see, it covered that junction where the other slanty boning met. It covered it well. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing I did for the first two bonings, and also go ahead and do the same thing for the other bonings as well, the other lines that I marked. So you want to go ahead and do that for the other sides. Now after sewing my boning, the next thing I'm doing here is to stitch in my cups. This is what it looks like with the bodice. This is pretty straightforward, but if you're someone that is not very used to the sewing machine, you want to notch the curve. That's the curve where the cups are going to sit, or you're going to stitch the curve. You just want to give it little snips because it helps you when sewing, you know, because this is a very sharp curve. It can be quite difficult when you're stitching, so you want to, you know, give it some notches so that it releases the tension when you're stitching. So that's what I went ahead to do for this second curve, just to show you and illustrate to you what you need to do to make your stitching in of cups, or to make the stitching in of your cups quite easy. After doing that, the next thing we are working on is the back. For the back, I've gone ahead to mark 0.5 from the center back. You just want to mark 0.5, and then I'm measuring out my boning, because for this back piece we are going to be putting 3 boning channels, 3 boning each for each side, meaning 6 in total. So 1 boning is going to be a visible boning, but the other 2 is going to be hidden inside in between the main fabric and the lining, and is going to be beside our eyelet. This is done so that it helps secure the eyelet and makes it strong and firm. If you don't put bonings beside the eyelet, with because of the tension in that area, there is a possibility for it to snap. That's, your eyelets will not be firmly secured. So you want to secure the eyelet with 2 boning channels. Now these 2 boning channels that are going to be beside the eyelet, I'm going to be hiding them in between the main fabric and the lining. So that's what I'm going ahead to mark, starting with my 0.5 inch seam allowance. I'm marking the 2 boning channel, marking the space for the eyelet, and then marking the channel for the main channel for the boning that will be visible. Now for the visible boning channel, we are just going to go ahead and do the same thing we did for the front. Just like we did for the front, I'm gonna ahead to prepare my boning, cut it out, press it, and here I'm sewing it down on this 1.5 inch width strip, just like we did for the front. So here I'm sewing it down. So now after sewing it down, I'm sewing in my cups for my lining. That's for the front. I'm going ahead to sew in the cups before coming back to the back. This is my strip. I want to go ahead and measure my strip, joining the front and the back, and it gave me a 16.5. So I'm just going to cut out my strip and keep that aside. Here I'm sewing the hem of my flare with the lining, and I'm using a hemming gum for that, so that after stitching, when I press it, it's going to be staying nice and clean, like it's going to just stick together without the lining poking out. Here to seal it or secure it, I'm doing a top stitch, and after that I'm going to give it a good press. Now after pressing and sewing the 3 parts of this flare, this is what it looks like. These are the side seams, this is the center front. And remember our strip, I'm coming back to our strap, sorry, that's our spaghetti strap. I'm gonna have to cut it 0.5 inch by 16.5 inch, and here I'm just going to sew that down on the sewing machine. Now each strip is going to cover for front and back. There's no joining at the shoulder. It's just going to be continuous from the front to the back. So here I'm joining it to my back, because I had to sew in the strip first before sealing the back with the lining. That's why I paused that back to secure my strip. So here I'm sewing in my lining, sandwiching that strip in between the lining and the fabric. After sewing it on the top part of this back piece, I'm going to go ahead and do a top stitch, just like you're seeing me do. I'm going ahead to do a top stitch, and after that it's time to join it to the front as well. Remember the front, we are going to be joining the strap to the front, and to join the second part of this strap, I'm going to be measuring it from the center front, so that I make sure that they are equidistant from each other. So I've gone ahead to mark that and also place it in that position that I've marked, and then stitch it down before bringing in my lining, and then sewing it down, sealing my lining. That's sealing the top part of this front piece, just like we did for the back. After doing this, of course, I'm going to go ahead and do a top stitch to secure this. We usually do a top stitch to secure so that the lining does not poke in front of the main piece. So yeah, the next thing I'm doing basically is to sew I'm sewing in the pockets. I've done series of tutorial on how to sew in a pocket to your dress or your skirt or what have you. So I'm just going to be speeding this up. So yeah, I'm sewing in my pocket to the side of my flare like so, and And after that, I'm going to go ahead to shape it, because I'm going to be needing the flay to join it to the upper part once we are done with the back. So after that, coming into the back, you want to seal the center back like so. That's the part that is going to be having your eyelet. I've held it down by 0.5. Now it's time for us to create those channels for the hidden boning. That's the boning that is going to be in between the lining and the fabric. So after sewing it, I've sewn the boning channel enough to accommodate the first boning very close to the edge, and then I've sewn in the space for the eyelet and then the next boning channel. So as you can see here, I'm illustrating how you are going to be putting your boning, but before you do that, you want to smoothen the edge of that bone so that it goes in without any obstruction. To smoothen the edge, you can use a file, that's a nail file, or you can just use your scissors to smoothen it, or you can use fire, that's a lighter, to smoothen it. In my own case, I went ahead to use a lighter, and then after smoothing it will just slide in easily into this channel. So here I'm fixing it into the channel, and of course you want to make sure that it stops 0.5 inch before the end of your dress, before the end of this back piece. So here I'm doing the same thing for the second channel. Like I said, this is a hidden channel, so it's not so visible. Apart from the lines that will be showing, the bonings are not visible. So I've gone ahead to do the same thing here. I'm stitching the second part of this back piece just like we did for the first part, creating the channel for the boning and also the space for our eyelet. So yeah, I've gone ahead to do that, smoothing my boning and then slide it in like so, leaving the 0.5 inch seam allowance for the down part. So after doing that, the next thing I'm doing is to shape my fabric, that's joining our back piece to our front piece. Remember, what we gave as seam allowance is 1 inch for the side seam, but I usually always go ahead and remeasure just to make sure that everything is correct. So after shaping our pieces together, the next thing I'm doing is to seal the down part like so. After sealing the down part, the next thing I'm doing is to join the flay part to the upper part of this dress. This part is pretty straightforward. Just join it to the upper part of this dress. Remember, because of that spacing, remember the modesty panel is the spacing at the back. We are going to be, after the eyelets, we'll be fixing the modesty panel to cover, but the modesty panel is actually optional. You can decide to leave your back open, and just after strapping, it just gives you that decorative lacing, just like you're lacing a shoe. But I can't leave my back open like that. I prefer the modesty panel, you know, covering it up. So after fixing my eyelets, at the end of it, I went ahead to fix my modesty panel. So here I'm fixing my zip, but before I did that, I went ahead to seal off this upper part, the upper part of this dress. That's the zip, the upper part where the zip is going to be starting from at the waistline. I've gone ahead to seal it up with this strip. I cut out a strip of 1.5 inch width, and I'm just going to use it up to, you know, pipe that upper part like so, just to make it neat. So I'm going to be piping that part at the waistline so that it is not looking rough. So I've gone ahead to do that. This is what it looks like in front. It looks neat, as you can see. After that, I'm going to go ahead and fix my zipper. So here I'm fixing my zip. Because of the nature of this style, your zip is going to be starting just from the waist, because of course you're going to be having an eyelet that you're going to be strapping for the back, that's looping or, you know, tying for the back. It doesn't need a zip for that upper part. So here the zip just started from the waist. After that, I'm going to go ahead and fix my eyelets, which I'll be doing in the next tutorial, which is going to be coming immediately after this one. I'll show you how to, you know, use a grommet machine to fix your eyelets. If you really enjoyed this tutorial and if you've been with me up to this very point, I just want to say a very big thank you. This is what the final look looks like. I think I love it. The only thing I do not love about this is the padding I use for the bust. I actually think it feels too strong. I prefer the softer padding. So remember I said in the beginning of this tutorial that I was experimenting with this padding, and at the end of the day I didn't really like the effect. So that's like the only thing I do not like in this dress. Aside from that, I think I love every other thing. I love the fitting, I love the combination. Thank you so much for coming with me on this ride. See you in my next one. Bye.